Good afternoon and welcome. This is the Listen Up a Card Show, brought to you by the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Community Empowerment. Today, I just wanted to wish you a Happy New Year, as this is our first show for the year of 2022. Last year, we had a variety of shows ranging from politics to arts to schooling and whatever have you that youth have multiple points of views on. Today, however, we have an interesting topic. But last year, I want to stress that we had many giveaways. And today our giveaway is breakfast for two at the Pure Ocean restaurant. And we have it right here. Today's topic, we'll be talking about COVID-19 and education, navigating through online learning. And this is only part one. We'll be having a part two and possibly a part three, as this topic can simply not be covered in one single hour. I have some very exciting guests here this evening with me, and let's get right into it. First, we have a parent by the name of Letitia Coward Challenger, and she's been a nurse for 21 years and she has one child. Hi, Letitia. All right.
Nice to be here.
Glad to have you as well. We have an IT specialist by the name of Mr. Sean Hoyt. And he's a trained graduate teacher with 12 plus years of experience. And he functioned as IT coordinator for 11 years, and he currently teaches at the Christchurch Girls' School. Good afternoon, Mr. Hoyt.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
All right. We have another teacher by the name of Miss Miranda Fergus. And she's a trained graduate teacher as well, with 20 years experience teaching in the primary school system in Barbados. But not only that, but she pursued many different education, and she has even a master's in the care and education in early childhood setting, and she has a diploma in educational leadership, and she even went to the Erdeston Training College. Good afternoon, Ms. Fergus.
Good afternoon, Terrell. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to the panel as well.
And last but not least, we have Mr. Nigel Richards, another teacher. Mr. Nigel Richards, he taught for about 10 years. He's into accounts, but right now he teaches at the foundation school at the primary school level. And he even has a daughter who's pursuing education at the University of the West Indies, Cape Hill. So good afternoon, Mr. Richards.
Good afternoon, panel. Good afternoon, listeners. Information they're not entirely correct, but let's go on.
That's the information we were given. So let's get right into it. For the teachers, let's get right into this. I have a question for you. What kind of effect do you think the online learning environment is having on your social well-being? Not only the students' social well-being, but yours. Let's start with Mr. Richards.
Okay. Me personally, I have found that the online teaching has caused me to spend a lot more time looking at computer screens and also and fine print. It has resulted, one, in blurred vision, I would suspect, and headache at times. So therefore, it requires me to limit the amount of time that I spend viewing screens. So it's a matter of modifying your behavior once you recognize that there may be a challenge.
Yes, and Ms. Fergus, what about you? How has this online teaching environment affected your not only physical well-being but emotional well-being?
Well, with every new environment, every new scape that we've been placed in having to do online teaching and learning, there are pros and cons to everything. So like Mr. Richards, definitely the blurred vision, easier to be mentally fatigued, I would say, and I would also confirm that I've had colleagues that have had this issue as well. I would also say that it has been a good challenge to really put myself into the 21st century education that we need to be, and using the technology to provide support, because I'm an early childhood practitioner. So to provide that support that they need, as well as connect with parents, So I find that it has been a challenge, and not necessarily it has placed me to develop more digital resources. So in that aspect, it has been good.
Yes, thank you. But Ms. Coward, as a parent, and we've heard the talk about physical schooling being set to resume very soon. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about that?
Well, unless they get the numbers, the COVID numbers down, I really am not comfortable. I'm a nurse first, and I know how easily this thing can spread. And it's very hard on the children to be in a school environment face to face with their friends and not be able to interact and play and that kind of stuff. It's going to be difficult for them. And I do believe that numbers will go back up within the school setting if they go back up before they really should.
Okay, so you're not comfortable with your child going back into the physical setting at this time?
No.
All right. Mr. Hoyt, as an IT specialist, you must be there to solve the many problems associated with the children and online learning. What are some common difficulties experienced by the students, and how do you go about solving them?
Well, one of the issues that we would normally see as ITCs, and this is not only me, I think that all ITCs throughout Barbados would have experienced a high level of requests for resetting of passwords. You have to appreciate that the online environment came about as an emergency response, and a lot of schools were not, some students were not, I guess, aware of their passwords and stuff like that, or even aware that they had an account. And as time went on, we found that a lot more students were contacting us in terms of trying to get their password reset. And that still goes on like today and like last week. I'm still resetting passwords because it is not something that's common to the students, and because it's not common to them in first instance, they're now calling very regularly to get their password reset. Sometimes they forgot, and it is just the major problem that I'm having. But I found that through the ministry, we would find ways to deal with this because we've made ourselves accessible to parents, accessible to students. So it was much easier for us to deal with because we had a direct connection through phone lines that were attached to our laptops, or we would have, like me, I would have set up a form that students can email the school and get their password reset. So that is a major concern. But I think that now we are seeing less of it, although we're still seeing some requests. It's not as many as before.
But in your opinion, are students adapting well to the use of technology for online learning?
I will say yes, because we have to appreciate that these students come from a generation where I find that they're online a lot. They're on their devices a lot, and I think that that has helped them to transition to online school. I think that when we consider that we are the old ones now, I mean, when you talk about technology, we are getting old. Those are the ones that are almost born with a device in their hand, and they're actually easy to move to that platform much easier. I found that the students were able to adapt to the online school. Now, let me not say 100%, because some students still were not able to navigate the device as we would like. But I will say that due to the inquisitive nature of students and children, I found that they were able to learn a lot of this stuff on their own. And I was surprised that some of the students were able to adapt to the situation a lot easier than we would have given them credit for. I think that we tend to look at things differently because we're adults, but I find that the children would have taken up the device. And in some cases, some students would tell me about things that I didn't even realize that they could do. So I think that they really, at my school I can say, and at some of the schools I heard ITC speak of, I found that they adapted very well.
Yes. So a question from Ms. Fergus and Mr. Richards. We know that the physical environment provided the means of forming relationships very easily, because the student could just come to your desk as a teacher and ask you for a moment alone. But I want to know how easy or how much harder is it, in your opinion, is it to form these relationships with your students in this online environment?
You
Ladies
want to go first,
first.
Mr. Richard? Okay.
I was,
Um, Go ahead.
okay,
Mr.
this is what
Richards,
I
yeah,
found
she
that
wants you to go first.
I found that the students have no difficulty in making such requests in terms of want to have a one-to-one conversation. So I don't think that the online environment presented any difference or challenges in relation to having building relationships. I think to a large extent maybe it is more comfortable because um, they can request join a class, they can request that they want to speak to you afterwards, and you can set up that platform that they can speak to you one to one. On occasions, they may say, "Well, my mother would like to speak to you," or some guardian may wish to speak to you, and the online environment affords the opportunity more so than the face to face because someone have to get in a vehicle and be commuted from one place to other. Whereas with this online environment, you can have that one to one conversation almost immediately with no cost or time. So I think that it affords better opportunity for those situations.
Yes. What about you, Miss Fergus?
So I will speak as from the early childhood viewpoint. Not that that's the only viewpoint I can speak from. It is far more difficult for small children to socialize as they need to in the online environment, and the practitioners, the teachers have to be conscious of providing opportunities to do this way. I will speak from my personal experience. The class that I had in nursery, I was given the opportunity to bring them forward to this year. So because of that setup, I know most of the children, although I do have some new students. I knew the students from before, their need for socialization, or their how to operate in the online environment. So it made it easier for me because I had known these students and I had actually gotten the opportunity to interact with these students face to face in the last school year. For a teacher who is now in the early childhood environment, who is now getting to know the students, and sometimes how a student manifests or things that a student may do at school may not be the same thing that they would do at home. So it would have presented more challenges for the early childhood classroom. Something I would have done last year was to have an opportunity for open play dates where they're not necessarily having the teacher doing something directly at them, but they're just there doing something called parallel play. Parallel play is where children are playing, both playing with toys. They're not necessarily playing with together, but they're both playing and interacting and maybe showing each other the type of toy that they have. So that is the biggest type of play that can be facilitated online. So it took a lot of thinking of how to facilitate that engagement. But it is more difficult. I'm not going to not say that it is for younger students.
All right, thank you. Well, in that light, I have a question for the panel because we're talking about relationships here. How is the parent-teacher's relationship in this environment now? Are the PTA still going on? Tell us more. So we can start with Mr. Hoyt.
Well, I know that for my school, we we don't have the PDA function at this time. But one of the things that I would say is that online learning will only be effective if we have a close partnership with parents. I think that this is where parental involvement in the child's school life is I guess this is the most important time for them to be involved. Because right now we have a situation where we cannot physically be there to assist students, and there are not enough teachers to give that support to the student. So at home, the parents now have to partner with us and be more accessible so that we can communicate with them and say, okay, these are the things that we're looking at. These are the areas that we're having challenges with. Because a lot of times behavior may be one of those things. Now, in the class, we cannot address behavior as readily as we would in the classroom, in the physical classroom. So we may have to communicate with the parent and say, okay, here's the thing. We need you to speak to this student on this issue so that they don't disrupt the class, because we have to appreciate that there's more than one child. There's a different environment, and we also have to be able to conduct ourselves in a way that we can all appreciate what the teacher is doing. So we cannot have a situation where that time that is so short be taken up with a lot of discipline, or sit or turn off your camera or Those things cannot be a part of the online environment. So we need a deeper partnership with parents for this to be effective.
All right,
I,
thank
I,
you.
I want to jump in here.
No problem. But we do need to take a break. So right after the
Yeah.
break, we'll have you, Miss Fergus, and then we can get all the other panelists' opinion on this question. We'll be right back after the break. This is the Listen Up Accord.
Sorry.
Welcome back to the Listen Up Accord. Now, Miss Fergus, you were jumping in on the point and countering what Sean said about the relationship between
Not to
parents and
counter
teachers
at all.
at that time.
No.
I was
Not to
hoping you'd
counter.
counter. Well, let's hear what you have to add then.
Not to counter, to adjust.
Let's adjust it.
To amend.
Let's amend
take
it
out the
then.
word- let's remove the word online. Learning, the educational environment, is a triad. It's a triad, and this triad is the students, the school, as well as the parents. This is regardless of whether it's online or physical. A successful school needs active parents. If you even informally examine those schools that that when we look at those fated judge that the results of the common entrance examination, if you really examine those schools have a very powerful parent presence. And I'm not only talking about the schools that have the top students. Look at the schools that are in the top 5. The parents are present, they're active, they are aware of where their children should be, and they communicate easily with the teachers. Now, I'm not going to say that this will be an easy thing to do. It will not. There will be some parents that find difficulty communicating with teachers, and there will be some teachers that find difficulties communicating with parents. But I am saying it is not limited to online learning. So it's an amendment. Learning, the educational system cannot be successful without a powerful parent and school relationship. They're an important column of the foundation of success. We need parents when we go back to physical, and we need parents when we're online. We need everyone to work together. So this is just an amendment.
And there was this rumor back in my day going to school that the students who do best they have the parents that you see them at every PTA meeting and every class level meeting. I don't know how true that is, but that was a myth back in my day. Mr. Richards, what are your thoughts on the parent-teachers relationship in the online environment?
What I would like to say, and what I have always said, that a child's or student's academic success has 3 components: the teacher, the child, and the parent. If all 3 of these components work together, it will result in success. If any one of these components are failing, or anyone is failing, then you will get a diminished return for the investment. Now, this is it. With the online situation, in terms of the involvement of parents, now understand this is a new thing. Teachers are learning this to cope with this environment as well. Teachers are now looking at developing lessons, assessment tools, and stuff like that. So therefore, it is more difficult in this environment to foster and create the relationship with parents, because now you have to set up these charts and stuff like that and monitor the charts. Sometimes with some environments and parents, some of them need as much supervision as the children in terms of following the instructions and the parameters and the protocol of the chart and what it's for. So managing these situations requires time too. So therefore, the teacher now is bombarded with not only having to deal with students and building the lessons and doing all these things in this new environment, but also catering with this situation in regards to the involvement of parents. Now understand that I recognize that really and truly you manage a child better if you have the support of the parent. Parents need to come on board and really put their hands to the plow and help teachers out. But teachers must find a way, and as time go on, I believe everyone will get better at it. And as time go on, teachers will find a better way to, as they improve with the online teaching and assessment and stuff like that, they will also find time to make better adjustments as to how to bring the parents into the whole environment and get their support. But it's tough right now. For me, it's tough.
Yes, and Ms. Coward Canada, as the parent on the panel, what are your thoughts on the parent-teacher relationship, and how is your parent-teacher relationship as it relates to your ward or child right now?
As Miss Order, I can't remember her name now.
Mr.
What you
Richards?
said,
Fergus.
even before Miss Fergus, right?
Oh.
Sorry, even before the whole online environment, it has always been important for me to have a relationship with my son's child. And this was so that I would be able to have a gauge of any difficulties or whatever he has. But online, especially because we have to put more effort into making sure that the children understand what they're doing, that they complete their assignments and that kind of stuff. And also, we become secondary teachers in that if there's something that the child doesn't understand, we may not be able to help them. And we need to be able to call the teacher or have a conversation with the teacher, say, well, look, my child does not understand such and such and such. Can you explain it to me so that I am better able to help him or her sort that out? But we can only do that if we have a proper conversation or a proper rapport, you know. Collective, in order for us to collectively help the child, we have to work together. It's all about working as a team.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, there's been a lot of talk surrounding this topic that I'm going to bring up next. But just remember that the only way to win the prize is to interact with us. And the most interactive listener or viewer is the one who will win this breakfast for two. So please continue to interact with us via social media. But this has been a hot topic among teachers and students, and it's even led to some online protests, I would say. So I want to know, what has been your experience and what are your thoughts on the online testing measures taken lately? I know that in some cases we've had responders, and in some cases there's been a camera on Zoom, and in some cases they've been take-home assignments. So what are your experiences as it relates to the whole online testing measures? We can start with Mr. Hoyt.
Well, I do more project-based assessment. So I would give the students a project, and they would turn in this project at the end, and that would be what I would mark them on. Now, it's difficult for me. It's difficult for me because sometimes I would teach concepts that I know that are at the level of my students. So the difficulty comes where some students may turn in work that is extraordinary, meaning they might do something that is fantastic. The difficulty is, where did the parental involvement begin and where did the students' involvement end? So I have to walk a fine line, and sometimes I have to take into consideration the student that was there before. Now, who I knew that student to be during the term, or the work that they were putting in, is it equal to what I'm getting now? So that is the fine line, and that's where I would say a lot of teachers have issues with assessment online, because there's no way for us to validate that the students are really the ones doing it. We don't know how. So we have to be careful with how we mark. And I know the other teachers would agree with me. And I know that I've heard other teachers say that they don't really like the online assessment because it is not a true representation, because we cannot really monitor the students properly when they're completing the assessment.
All right, Mr. Richards.
Okay, so I will have assessment. Sometimes I will have verbal online assessment, and you can ask the child a question, and you can also look to see the child eyes shift to a different part rather than looking at the screen. So chances are someone in the house is probably helping them with the answer or distracting them. One or the two of those. With the written test, written method of assessment, sometimes you see some language in the answers, in the construction of the answers. It could be that the child would have gone to the online and found language and found an answer which may not necessarily be age appropriate in terms of the language they're using, and it may be found online. It could very well be too that the parent or someone else would have furnished those answers. So, as Sean said, it's a difficulty in validating it. What I can say is that I have colleagues, like at my school, the class 4, we were as a team. And my colleagues, well, this is the first year I'm doing it, but I have 2 colleagues who are very, very experienced. And they have come up with some new methods that they're helping me out with, in terms of they will find ways to look at the script while the children are writing the work. They will also find ways to look and see when the child is putting in the answers, what how they're entering the answers and stuff like that. But even that, you still I don't see any way that you can really say you can invigilate any sort of assessment properly in a remote environment. I can't say no. Maybe there are ways, but as it is now, I cannot see. I cannot see a way.
But I hope that your students aren't listening to this, because they may think that they have one up on you. Miss Ferguson?
Fergus, please. It's
Fergus, sorry. Yes.
Yes. In terms of assessment, what we have to do again is consider, think about assessment like a spectrum. So we have to understand the different types of assessment. Generally, we parents at home are accustomed to assessment results that come from summative assessment. So unfortunately, what happens when we anchor ourselves so much in summative? So the summative assessment is, I do a test, I get a score. Some parents would say, if you do good on this test, you would get a bicycle, you would get Christmas, you would go over. You can't go over to Disney World now, or but you would get a reward. So that's a test and a score. So there are different types of assessment. So I would have had the experience the first time that we were online. I was assigned the reading program, and I would have done a type of diagnostic reading assessment. So this reading assessment, the purpose of it was to really get a picture of the reading environment of the school. But I'm still there right now. So what happened in that experience was that there were some parents that, like Mr. Richards said, that there were some children that I really was a little bit shocked. The parents were prompting them. But what I realized what it was is that we are so anchored sometimes in that test result. And my child's success is that parents sometimes don't realize that they're hindering the children where they're trying to provide so much support. They don't realize that they're actually doing the work for the children. And I believe that in many cases, that is what happens with parents, where the line or the bridge of the difference between providing support to help the child develop on their own versus providing the answer. And I think sometimes there is a difference that parents don't necessarily understand, or laypersons don't necessarily understand. But when we come and we anchor ourselves in only that summative assessment, that assessment with that test score, you find that will happen, because persons do compare themselves. They shouldn't, but they do. People want to know how good did your child do with the test versus my child. And as soon as we're doing that, then we're going to get the pressure of my child has to do good, and we're going to get those pressures. But if, like, I've had the experience with formative assessment where I went through and I said, look, this is to find out what is going on with your child. And from there, we are going to make a plan. So once parents understand that, I found the experience that it wasn't a problem of the over-prompting or the over-support or the misguided support is what I want to say. So I think that if we understand, everyone understands the different purposes of the different types of assessment, we will be better equipped, whether it be online or at home, because sometimes we have similar experiences with persons getting tests before and prompting the children. So it is a mindset that we have to look at. And it's the mindset that we are seeing in the online environment. I believe, this is my personal opinion, it is a manifestation of what was already there, and we're seeing it more. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Coward Calendar, as a parent, you've heard the teachers, you've heard some of the smart ways in which students have received more or less helps. And I know that as a parent, you would have seen your child have, anxiety as these online assessments were coming up. Because even though you don't have to go to the classroom, you still have that anxiety and that fear of the word exam or assessment. What has your experience been?
As you said, with any test, there's always some measure of anxiety. I just tell him, well, look, it is just like if you are in regular school. The only difference is that you're at home sitting on in front of a computer, which, in truth and in fact, you're in your home environment, which should make you even more comfortable. I am not a parent who hovers. I I let him set up where he's supposed to be, and I make my exit. He will come to me if he has an issue, but he knows that if there's a test, you have no reason to get up. You stay put and you make sure you do what you have to do. I'm not one of those helicopter parents at all. But I find that he has been coping really well with the online environment completely. Whether it be testing, whether it be assignments, even just general participation in class. He's been functioning really well in the online environment. That's the truth.
All right. Thank you so much for the honesty. Mr. Hoy, please, Ms. Fergus.
Before you go to Mr. Hoy,
another amendment.
An addition. You just said a word that I was going to come up with, and there was a song. I don't know the Jamaican artist, but he was like, "My money, haha," or something like that. I want to use these two letters, and I want to say ha. Honesty and accountability. So you just spoke about honesty. So as a parent, like, be honest about where your child is. As a teacher, be honest about where you are. Because we have to be accountable as teachers. I tell my parents, and I want to say good afternoon to my beautiful darlings every reception here. Just have to say that. But and the parents, of course, we have to be accountable to, as teachers, and we have to be accountable as parents. We have to hold each other accountable. When I begin a year, I ask parents to try to get a copy of the, oh Lord, what is it called? The help me, colleagues. It's online now. I can't remember. Oh, I'm having typically town phenomenon. But there's a document that parents can get that shows, not the syllabus, the parent, attainment targets. I got it. See? There's the digital copy that parents can get for every year. Although we do need an updated attainment targets and curriculum in our system. However, it gives you a guideline of what your child should be doing. And I always tell parents, hold me accountable. If you see that there's something that you're concerned of, a curriculum is not being covered, or even if you think I've said something to your child, call me. Say, well, Miss Fergus, most people just call me Fergus. Fergus, this was said and I'm not comfortable, which comes back to communication. And be honest. So, okay, be honest about where your child is. So like I have done a basic, because I have some extra degrees, as my daughter would say, in literacy instruction. That's one of my areas of expertise. And I've done some letter assessment with my year group. So one of the things is that there are some students that they are in a place where they don't know as many as I would like them to know at this age. But what we are going to be honest about where the child is, both as a teacher and as a parent. So if we use that ha, and we are honest and we are accountable on all sides, let me tell you, our children will start to really flourish, and that open communication. So it's a kind of amendment or an addition.
Well, thank you, Ms. Fergus. And you just mentioned the word lessons, and I want to know, and the audience wants to know, how relevant or useful or important are lessons in this day and age, in this online environment?
Oh, when I say lessons, I did not mean what we traditionally call lessons, which is extra support. Mm-hmm. It depends, but it depends on if the child needs the extra support. The reality of it is, if we are honest about, if your child is in class 3 or class 4 and they're not reading, your child needs lessons. The curriculum that the teacher is required to cover is not that of reading instruction. If your child is in Infants B and they do not know the majority of the sight words, your child may need lessons. So it depends on what they need. And let me be also clear, your child may be gifted, so they may need extra exposure So it depends on a personal evaluation. I would never say that it's not necessary. I would say that um, be as a parent, I would advise parents to have discernment about who gives your child those lessons, right? So if the person is just doing worksheets, is that what your child needs? If the child has issues and they're struggling, is that what they need? Is so again, on it still comes back down to honesty and accountability. If you're honest about what your child needs, and if they do need that extra support, then you look around in the same way that you would shop around for anything that is important. You shop around, you have your judgment criteria of what your child may need, and you find somebody to fit that criteria. Because sometimes it is a fit. That's how we see lessons. They're an integral part. There are many persons that the lessons support really, really help them. And there's some children that don't need it. And don't burn out the students if they don't need to be burnt out. And especially with online.
All right, thank you. Well, Mr. Hoyt, in this day and age, especially with the whole online environment, we know that students need extra materials and resources, including but not limited to these devices. Now, what support or policies does the school have in place if the student does not have these devices?
Well, if the student don't have a device, they can contact the school, and we will make a request to the ministry. Once their device is available, that person will get a device. Um, in terms of training and stuff like that, because beyond devices, the students need to be able to also use the programs that we are using. So teachers would have been trained. I think that the ministry was very proactive in going ahead early and getting the teachers trained. And then, well, they trained the ITCs first, and then the ITCs went out and trained the staff. Now, the thing
Please,
about
yes, sir.
training is that it is ongoing. It is not something that we are doing just at the beginning, because the way how technology is, it is dynamic. It changes all the time, and you kind of have to adjust and bring in new technologies to help the teachers to be able to teach the lessons effectively. Now, in this, then we would have to do some training with the students. So I myself, sometimes the teachers would call me in and I would just do a little session with the students. If there's a program that they want to use, they might call me up and say they want to use this. How can this work? And then I would engage the students in my IT class, or they would call me in their class, and I will act as a support mechanism that the students themselves can be walked through the process easily. So I would also then try to have a session with the entire staff. So if there are any new technologies, I would bring them on board for the whole staff, and everybody will get to benefit from anything that is new or any new trends. So all the new bells and whistles that Google will come up with, I would always hold a session. If I think it's major, I will hold a session, and I would always help the teachers to understand. So this is something that is really student-centered. We really, really try to be student-centered in our approach towards this online learning environment.
Yes, but you know, Mr. Hoyt, we don't want to get too comfortable in the online learning environment. So I want to know, do you believe, and this is for all panelists, do you believe that there should be somewhat of a blended approach to this online learning environment in terms of blended and physical?
When you say blended and you say comfortable, I think that the blended is what we're going back to in February, because what my concern is, and I'm hoping that this pandemic did not cause a knee-jerk reaction to technology. I believe that teachers should always be using technology in their classes, and right now this is the prime time for them to harness all the technological skills that they can get, because when we return to school, I still want to know that the students are using Google Classroom, that the teachers are using Nearpod and using Google Classroom to send homework or whatever, because we never know when the water may go off. We never know when there may be a hurricane or some sort of devastation that may stop us from going to school, or may just be a day that the rain fall real heavily and there's flooding. But at the same time, I want teachers to use the same skills that we're getting now all the programs, the Padlet, all those different programs that they are now becoming so accustomed to using that when they get into class, they also use that in the classroom, and then the children can also get that access to them after school, where they can also utilize technology to interact with the students after school.
Thank you. And Mr. Richards, what are your thoughts on a blended approach?
I think the blended approach is the best idea. I think you get the best of both worlds. We do not know what the future will hold. I mean, this pandemic clearly demonstrated that you don't know what will happen. So it's better to be prepared for all eventualities, or as much eventualities that may be possible, so that you may be able to cope. Now, in terms of the use of technology, I can tell you this. I was using technology in the classroom before with the videos and stuff, but since the online situation developed, I am using more technology, and I have seen significant and fundamental benefits of using technology, like those online interactive exercises. And I explain to students, now you have to take a responsibility for your academic success, and a lot of these things you can do on your own. You should get to the stage of maturity where you decide, I want to do some more work, so I will try interactive exercise. That is, and they're entertaining. And what is good about it is that it provides immediate feedback, so students can tell whether they're doing well or not. So therefore, especially if you're doing well, it would encourage students to do it. So you want to get the students to the stage where they take some responsibility and they start doing things on their own. As I told them, those electronic devices can be used as a tool and a toy. Of course, yes, have some fun and use it as a toy, but make sure you spend more time using that device as a tool.
Thank you. Ms. Fergus, what about you? How do you feel about a blended approach rather than all face-to-face or all online?
Sorry, I was reading a comment that came up. So it depends on what people define as blended approach. The school to which I am assigned currently, we actually, whilst other schools were doing blended, we were actually always full, whereas the split day that some parents and persons will be familiar with. So I think this may be my first time going into it. I personally can say that whilst we were full face-to-face, from the beginning of the term, I opened my Google Classroom and the students were put into the classroom and the resources were put there as support, because I want to speak to what I asked about honesty, and I would say that I'm so excited about what Mr. Hoyt said, but all schools are not built equally, and all teachers don't have the same level of training that he has provided. So that also can present itself as an issue, as well as resources. So for example, where I am, I would not say that there's automatic resource access to something as simple as a projector. That does not mean that I'm not going to challenge myself to integrate. But we have to accept the realities to where we are and being able to have the conceptual understanding of how online teaching can really work. Because my fear is that, like, for example, if you go into my Google Classroom, you're not going to see a lot of videos. That's because if you understand how different children learn, some children are not going to like the videos. So what happens with me is that I build a lot of stuff. So it's like a new world that we're exploring. And since I'm a sci-fi person, and maybe I might be excited more than the average teacher. So I see it as a whole new world. Sometimes it does become overwhelming trying to learn to then teach, but it is what we have to do to make sure that the students are the safest that they can be, as well as that they still benefit and move forward, especially in the early childhood environment.
Yes, thank you very much.
Can I add an amendment? To what
we
she
seem
said?
to be in court here, man. Yes.
Yeah, I no, because when she spoke about resources, I don't necessarily agree with the resources because we have to become creative. And the beauty of technology is creativity. Now, you said all schools are not built equal in terms of the equipment and stuff like that. But if we're talking about blended, you can, right now, I believe that the students in your class, because the mere fact they're in your class, they're using the device. So there is a device. All teachers in the past, I remember when we were doing Erdiston, Richards, you would agree. A lot of times when people put down the equipment they're using, it will be a projector. Equipment and technology aids as a projector. We're not only dealing with projectors now. You have the smart board that we had before that I found that a lot of teachers did not use. We have your own personal laptop that you can bring to the front of the class and you can play songs. You can use that without even the projector. The students can bring school their own devices, and I know that at my school, children bring school their devices when requested by the teacher. There's Socrative that we can use for assessment, that the students can bring school their own devices, and they don't have to use a book for assessment. You can use their device. Now, right now, the playing field is somewhat level because all students have a device. I put these in air quotes because I know there's some students that still are not, you know, having challenges, but the students, the majority of students in your class have a device. So do not only rely on the projectors and rely on the chalkboard and stuff like that. The devices are there. You can plan your work. And that's one of the things that I find teachers may find a lot of difficulty with. And I'm not knocking you teachers. You're my people. I'm not knocking you. But a lot of teachers need to plan. And technology calls for planning. You do not turn up and the technology is there working for you. You have to plan beforehand what you want to teach. Technology will force teachers to plan. So once you plan, teaching is a lot more seamless. You come into the classroom, the blended classroom, you may still teach on the blackboard. You may still teach with your projector. But if you come in with work already set that you can go into maybe Padlet or you go into one of those Nearpod, the students are already there with the technology. You just have to harness that potential that they have now and help them to use the technology to enhance their learning.
I definitely agree with you, but you missed what my amendment really was. My amendment was you spoke about yourself as an ITC providing support and training for your teachers, and I said all schools are not built equal in that way, sir. So you adjusted the wrong thing. You amended the wrong thing.
Because no, what
and
I'm
so
saying
what I'm
is,
going to
right
ask
now
you to
you've
do
already
is
had
not
the training.
generalize. Say some.
No, but you already
Say
have
some
the training. You
Training.
have the training. Don't you
Who
have the
provided the
training?
training, sir?
We seem to
provided
have
the training?
two law school teachers on the call. But we've heard Mr.
Let's
Richards.
move on.
Teachers were trained.
We've heard Mr. Richards.
Agreed.
We've heard Ms. Fergus. We've heard Mr. Hoyt on the blended approach. Now let's hear the parent. Ms. Cora Canada, does the blended approach proposed, would this help you in the ease of doing business? Would this help you in terms of being more flexible instead of having to be online with your child or ward all the time, all throughout the day? Would this help you in adding some flexibility to your day? How do you feel about the blended approach?
Well, as you said, having him home and me being home myself, it is hard because you really can't do anything. I have to schedule any appointments or whatever around when my son is in his school. But I find that the online school is really interactive and entertaining. That being said, we just have to find a way to blend the two together. So I personally don't have a problem with the blended approach, as long as it's utilized correctly, because you don't want that. You just do away with the whole computer system and just drop back into the classroom, and then everything that the kids have learned and experienced just go the way the rest. It makes no sense. There has to be a balance in order to take complete advantage of both modalities. That's what I think.
Yes, thank you.
Definitely agree.
But I have a question for the panel. What about students' social interaction among each other? Do students still make friends? Do they still keep friends? How do they go about doing that? It'll be interesting to find out how the age group that you teach go about doing that. Let's start with Mr. Richards.
I can tell you this. The students still interact. The students still make friends. First of all, before last year, I used to have a session at the end of my class where students would interact. The last 5 minutes, I would just let them do within reason what they want with one another. They would talk and talk all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be nothing to do with school. I provide that at the end. I have not done it so much this term. I think that the workload does not allow it. But this is how I get how the students still interact, and they can if they will. Those students that are playing, like my son, like see, I have a son who's in fifth form at St. Michael's, and he have friends not from Barbados, but all over the world who they play these games with. So this online environment have taught children how to have friends, and they don't have to be in the same space in terms of physical space. So it is a good thing. These games, you have to want them probably because I think they're quite addictive, and they could be distractive too. But the thing is, it allows students and children to have friends and make relationships other than in their own space, and that is a big move. So therefore, and this was not done with no help from teachers or parents or whatever. They just did it, and children just do things that we don't believe. So
Mr. Richards? Well, Mr. Richards gets his connection back. I'll say this. I haven't made a friend in about 2 years because of this online environment. I'm no online guy. But Ms. Fergus, I'd love to hear from you about you and your students.
Well, I would speak from the early childhood perspective. It's far more difficult for young children to find ways of engaging and developing friendship, and indeed learning through play, physical play, as they normally would if we were not faced with the current circumstances in which we are. Okay, my particular circumstance with my class, because I am familiar with them, and I taught them the year before. They had had the opportunity to engage with each other the year before. It is a little easier for them, and yet still difficult because some of my particular class is very social. So sometimes they will be like, "Hi, I miss you," and have that opportunity. So it's a matter of for an early childhood teacher to keep a balance of giving them what I call a play date time online, because that is as much as I can facilitate, using a parallel play that I spoke about earlier, versus the time for academic engagement. So it is a more difficult balance in the early childhood department to facilitate that social engagement, because we are the foundation that builds that social engagement and interaction skills that they develop, that when they get to be a gamer, that they can develop to meet to persons all over the world and so on. So because we have to rethink, and as teachers as well as parents. So that's why I would encourage parents as much as you can. It is very difficult even for you, especially for those parents who there's only a single child in the household. But as much as you can, if you can do some telephone conversations, some video calls with the children, it's really not the best circumstance, but it might be the best that they can be done at this time. Don't only leave it for the school environment. Let the children, especially let them go outside and play and run around, and if they have siblings, let them engage as much as you can, because it's definitely missing in the early childhood department, and it's not going to be exactly resolved when we go back, because we still have to be socially distanced. So we as educators and parents have to think about ways that we can allow them to engage but still remain that appropriate social distance. So the early childhood department is a higher mountain to climb, because we are the foundation and we're establishing those skills. So I would say it's definitely more difficult in early childhood.
Thank you very much. Now I have one more question. The time is definitely getting away from us. So I have one question for Mr. Hoyt, and then I want some recommendations from the panel, and then we'll wrap up. So Mr. Hoyt, have you had any instances at your school with computer misuse? And if so, what measures did you put in place?
Well, at my school, there haven't been confirmed reports. There have been reports, but they have not been confirmed in terms of an investigation carried out, because the investigation cannot be done by me, and that means I have to be a part of the investigation with the ministry. So the ministry is looking into allegations of what we will call computer misuse, but most of the time it would not likely be the students themselves, but mostly be somewhere somebody trying to gain access or something like that. In some cases, I've heard of situations where students will say they did not do something. So what we've been doing is we've spoken to the ministry, and the ministry has put in something called a two-step verification where the students' accounts are now secured. So you can't have a situation now where somebody will break into the students' accounts. So we have some sort of barrier now to protect the students. Now, prior to that, there was always a protection that was there where students, if somebody tried to break into their account, they would be alerted. The ministry would be alerted, and then they would alert me, the ITC or an ITC, and let them know that something is going on there. But really, for now, there are not confirmed reports, but there have been instances where people have reported it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, Ms. Coward Calendar, do you feel safe with your student now, your child? Do you feel safe with your child online now, hearing the measures that are put in place to protect them?
Yes, I police his online presence very, very, very tightly. That's the truth. Because it just takes a small mistake for so many things to open up to them, for them to be exposed to things that they really shouldn't be. So I police it. However, there's always an unguarded moment. You just have to trust that you have spoken to your child, you've educated your child to the point where they understand what is acceptable and what's the other word I'm looking for? What is conducive to their learning, to their education, to even their interaction. Because he goes online, he plays games, he and his friends set up meets. They sit on online, they talk, they laugh, they play games. My son sits down here on the floor and exercises, showing off with his friends and all kinds of stuff. It is just that we have to strike a balance, and we have to be mindful that this is the age the children are in, and we have to always educate them into the right things that they need to do. There's nothing more that we can do.
Thank you. Well, I hope he's listening, because mommy is policing you and your online presence.
Indeed.
Well, look, I really want some very 20 seconds of quick closing remarks, some encouragement to the students or encouragement to parents listening. So 20-second remarks, because we are very, very slim on time. So Mr. Richards?
Okay, what I can say is that the environment is new and teachers are trying their best. Teachers will improve and students will improve. As long as we continue to work at this thing, both teachers and parents will improve, and we will get better at it.
Thank you. Ms. Fergus?
Yes, I want to say, remember honesty and accountability. If we let that guide us under the umbrella of the 21st century skills of communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking skills, we will have a great foundation going forward. So remember, parents and teachers, be honest and be accountable.
Mr. Hoy?
Yes, that was what I actually wanted to speak about in terms of the triangulation of support for the students. I think that if parents and teachers work closely and we go forward with the same vigor, I think that the students can succeed beyond our imagination.
Yes, and Ms. Coward Calendar?
We are all on the same page, because I was about to say that having a rapport with the teachers as a parent is extremely important, because that's the only way that we can collectively help our children. Even if you don't like the teacher, put your personal feelings aside and just do what you need to do for the betterment of your child.
Thank you very much. Now, once again, just remember this breakfast for two voucher at the Pure Ocean Hotel, and that's our giveaway today. We've seen many interactions online via Facebook and the YouTube, and I know for sure it will be a tight one deciding who will win this voucher. But this has been the Listen Up a Card show, navigating through the online environment during COVID. Next week, join us as we have with us some special guests. We'll have the students next week. So we've heard the teachers today, and next week we'll hear the students, and then maybe in the third week we'll combine their point of views. So thank you. This has been the Listen Up a Card Show, brought to you by the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Community Empowerment and CBC. I'm your host, Tyrell Giles.
We're out. Okay. Okay, you're welcome. All right, bye.
Okay, bye. You're welcome.